The suburban enclave shimmered with an unsettling uniformity, where pastel-colored houses stood like silent sentinels in neat rows, each yard an immaculate green square. The sun was a pendulum, casting shadows that sliced through the symmetry. This place had a heartbeat of its own, steady, predictable, a metronome clicking through the hours of the day. It was the kind of place my father had chosen for his later years. A haven, he called it, where the air was fresh and the streets were quiet. With a modest pension and a yearning for peace, he had settled here, hoping for a simple life amidst the whispers of leaves and the occasional bark of a neighbor's dog. His wheelchair moved through the neighborhood with a gentle hum, a testament to his quiet resistance against the years that had worn him down physically, but left his spirit remarkably untouched. Then there was Karen, president of the Homeowners Association. Her presence was a storm in the calm, a gale that shook the carefully arranged life my father had constructed. Her eyes, sharp as glass, saw everything, or at least everything she wanted to see. To her, perfection was a mandate, not a suggestion. Rules were her gospel, and deviations were sins to be rectified. It started simply enough with a letter penned in her tight, angular scrawl. Complaints about the ramp my father had installed, unsightly, she called it. It marred the uniformity, she argued, though to anyone else it was a necessary kindness, a bridge between his world and the community. He read her words with a sigh, the paper trembling slightly in his hands, but he never raised his voice. Never let the anger that simmered beneath his calm surface show. I watched this unfold, each petty infraction noted and documented by Karen, with the diligence of a zealous tax collector. Her grievances mounted, grass too long by an inch, a flower bed slightly unruly, the faintest crack in the driveway. Each notice was a tiny needle, pricking at the fabric of my father's contentment, his gentle acceptance of life's imperfections. But he remained unruffled, his smile a quiet defiance against her relentless pursuit of order. I visited often, our conversations a balm. He spoke of her with a shrug, as if dismissing a bothersome fly. "She means well," he would say, composing his face into a mask of patient understanding. Those words echoed in my mind, a mantra that both frustrated and inspired me. Yet, beneath the surface, a plan was forming. Not out of malice, but necessity. My father's peace was sacred, and I would guard it with all the tools at my disposal. The irony was delicious. The whispers of the housing market, the opportunity that fell into my lap. A chance to turn the tables, to reclaim what Karen had tried to steal with her clipped sentences and officious demeanor. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of fire and shadow, I knew what I had to do. The pendulum had swung too far, and balance demanded restoration. The calm before the storm was over. The game was about to change, and I held the winning piece. For now. I watched and waited, a silent observer in this theater of suburban warfare. The winds of change were stirring, and soon, even Karen would feel their icy breath. The power she wielded so carelessly would soon be a thing of the past, a relic of a time when she thought she ruled this little kingdom. Time was ticking, and the rhythm was about to change. The world seemed to ripple with the echo of Karen's presence, like ripples in a pond disturbed by a single careless stone. Her shadow stretched across our neighborhood, smothering it with a suffocating blend of vanilla-scented tyranny and freshly printed newsletters. She was the self-appointed queen of our HOA, and her reign was one of tightly clutched rules and the sour stench of superiority. My father, resilient in spirit, wheeled himself down the path to our modest garden every morning. His hands moved methodically, each rotation a testament to silent defiance. The roses, his pride, bloomed defiantly against the sharpness of Karen's disapproving glances. But soon, those glances crystallized into something more tangible, a series of citations, each more absurd than the last. Unapproved garden gnomes. Read one. They stood stoically among the flowers, their ceramic smiles unwavering under scrutiny. Mailbox too whimsical, declared another, as if whimsy was a crime against the cemented uniformity Karen so adored. Karen's crusade was relentless. Citations appeared with the regularity of sunrise, each one crafted with the precision of a bureaucratic artisan. It was a tapestry of pettiness, woven intricately to ensnare my father in a web of frustration and helplessness. Her gossip painted him as a rebel, a man who dared to defy the holy commandments of the HOA charter. I watched the drama unfold from a distance, my mind sifting through each insult and each petty decree. The absurdity was almost comical, a tragic comedy with Karen at its melodramatic helm. Yet beneath the absurdity lay something deeper, a churn of emotions that simmered and festered. I felt the stirrings of quiet anger, a slow burn that promised to ignite if given the spark. Karen's voice was insidious, a whisper carried on the wind that swirled around block parties and barbecues. She spoke of my father as if he were a fable, a cautionary tale against which others could measure their compliance. I saw her influence shape conversations, saw neighbors nod with the weary resignation of those avoiding tyranny's gaze. One afternoon the sun dipped low, casting long shadows as I stood in the garden. The ripening fruit of my decision hung heavy in my mind. The irony was deliciously ripe. I could taste it in the air. Karen, in her zealous pursuit of order, her craving for power, had unwittingly handed me the keys to her own undoing. Vengeance, when it comes, is not always loud. It can be as silent as a shifting tide, as soft as the flutter of a butterfly's wings. I held in my hands the means to tilt the balance, to let the scales fall with a gentle nudge. It was simply a matter of time. 30 days, to be precise. 30 days until the board would learn that a new name graced the ledger of ownership for Karen's mortgage. I allowed myself a small smile, a quiet acknowledgement of the power now poised at my fingertips. Karen's world, so meticulously ordered, was about to experience the kind of chaos she had sown amongst us. I could already see the cracks forming, the veneer of control beginning to peel. Soon, even her shadow would have nowhere left to hide. I returned to my father's side, the air thick with unspoken resolve. Together, we watched the sun slip beneath the horizon, bathing the garden in twilight. It was a moment suspended in time, the calm before the storm, a storm that would wash away the petty kingdoms and leave only truth in its wake. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting long, angular shadows across my father's living room. The air held a hint of tension, a taut wire stretched by the relentless oppression of Karen, our HOA queen bee. She was a woman who thrived in the limelight of petty power, a maestro of rules and regulations. My father, a gentle soul with a body that betrayed him long ago, had become her favorite target. His crime? A ramp that didn't conform to the aesthetic of her suburban fiefdom. I had spent days documenting her transgressions. Emails, letters, photos, a tapestry of pettiness woven with threads of her entitlement. Her kingdom, the HOA, was her stage, and she relished her role as the enforcer of its trivial decrees. In her eyes, my father's struggle to maintain autonomy was an affront to her order. The irony, she believed herself a paragon of community service. I was patient. Calculation tempered my anger. Like a chess player, I considered my moves several steps ahead, quiet, deliberate. Each piece of evidence collected was a weight added to her scales of injustice. I knew her secrets, her soft underbelly she so carefully concealed beneath a cloak of suburban respectability. The day I visited the bank was unremarkable, save for the significance of my intent. The transaction itself was swift, a mere exchange of signatures and funds. I had bought her mortgage. Power shifted invisibly that day, like a breeze altering the direction of a ship. The irony was delicious. Karen, so obsessed with control, was now tethered to me by the very thing she had used to subjugate others. But I held my cards close. No grand announcements, no confrontation. For now, the knowledge was mine alone, a seed planted in fertile ground. My father's ramp stood defiantly, a testament to resilience while I waited for the right moment. Details mattered. Timing mattered. Revenge, I knew, was best served with precision, not haste. Then, a letter, my letter, delivered to her door with the crispness of a winter morning. It was impersonal, even courteous. A landlord's request for vacating the premises within 30 days. No malice in the words, just pure, hard facts. An irony of circumstance, where roles reversed and power realigned. I imagined her face as she read it, the dawning realization spreading like ink in water, her fortress of control crumbling, each piece dismantled by her own hand. A single move on my part had turned the game. I wondered if she knew yet how fragile her power had always been, a castle built on sand. Days turned into weeks, and the neighborhood buzzed with whispers. Karen was leaving, the queen dethroned, her reign ending not with a shout, but with the soft closing of a door. She never knew it was me, never knew the extent to which she had been undone by her own hubris. As I watched her belongings being packed away, a strange calm settled over me. Not vindication nor triumph, but a quiet sense of justice, balance restored in a world often tilted towards the undeserving. My father's ramp remained untouched, a silent victory in a war she never truly understood. Life settled into a new rhythm. The neighborhood exhaled, freed from the grip of her scrutiny. And as the last of her presence faded from view, I found solace in the simple truth that sometimes the greatest power lies not in the loudest voice, but in the quiet resolve to do what is right. The evening sky draped itself over the neighborhood like a velvet shroud. A hush settled in, the kind that falls just before a storm. Shadows stretched across driveways, creeping over meticulously mowed lawns. I could sense a shift, an undercurrent of unease, weaving its way through the community, like whispers pass through a chain-link fence. At first it was the small things. Mrs. Thompson from across the street, usually quick to offer a saccharine smile and a wave, now avoided eye contact as she hurried to her car. Mr. Jenkins, perpetually clad in his jogging gear, halted his routine mid-stride upon seeing me, feigning an exaggerated interest in a cloud overhead. A ripple of discomfort, a break in the placid surface of suburban life. Karen's empire was crumbling. Her reign of clipped lawns and passive-aggressive notes slipping through mail slots was drawing to an end. The knowledge sat in my chest like a quiet flame, warming and consuming all at once. The mortgage statement had arrived last week. My signature sat neatly at the bottom, a symbol of silent power. I had given her 30 days, an ultimatum bound in both ink and intention. Each morning since, I watched her from the window, the way one might observe a creature unsure of its place in a newly altered habitat. She moved as if the very air around her resisted, dense and unforgiving. The once steady click of her heels on the pavement seemed muffled now, absorbed by the weight of the impending change. She carried it like a cloak, invisible but inescapable, draped over her shoulders. Neighbors talked. They didn't need words. Their silence was heavy enough. It was as if the air itself had thickened, saturated with unspoken tension. Every head that turned away from her, every conversation that ceased mid-sentence as she approached, carved fissures into her fortress of control. I observed this new dynamic with a quiet satisfaction, not a gloating kind, but one rooted in justice. My father, with his slow, deliberate movements and soft-spoken nature, was no longer a target for her cutting remarks and thinly veiled disdain. The very fabric of her authority was unraveling, thread by thread. I pondered the irony. A woman who had thrived on rules and regulations, now trapped by the very structure she revered. The bylaws and clauses she wielded like a sword now served as her cage, a self-made labyrinth with no exit. There was a moment, one brief flicker in time where our eyes met across the street. Her gaze was a storm, swirling, tumultuous, yet grounded in the unshakable truth of her situation. For a second I thought she might speak, but the words never came. Instead, she turned away, shoulders hunched against the chill that had nothing to do with the weather. I stood there, rooted in place, feeling the neighborhood breathe around me. This was not just about my father or even Karen. It was about balance, the delicate dance between power and humility that few understood. The community was awakening, the slumbering beast of collective conscience stirring. And as the evening deepened and stars dotted the sky like scattered seeds, I felt the world tilt ever so slightly, realigning, recalibrating. Karen had 30 days, each one a step closer to a conclusion she could not control. And amidst it all, life continued, relentless and unyielding, a river flowing onward, carving new paths through familiar landscapes. The sun cast long shadows over the neatly trimmed lawns of the neighborhood as I sipped my coffee, gazing out the window with a quiet determination. The air was heavy with the scent of impending change. Today was the day Karen would discover the consequences of her actions, like a character in a Greek tragedy, unaware of the fates knitting her demise. I'd spent weeks meticulously orchestrating this moment, diving through layers of bureaucracy and legal jargon, each document a stepping stone on the path to poetic justice. It had all started with Karen's relentless harassment of my father, a gentleman who found solace in his garden, a sanctuary she aimed to disrupt with her petty rulebook. Her voice echoed in my memory, sharp as broken glass. But today it would be silenced by the quiet power of a single letter. I had acquired her mortgage, like a puppeteer seizing control of the strings, and she hadn't a clue. The notification of foreclosure, stark and unfeeling, was delivered that morning. I imagined her reading it, disbelief twisting her features, that ever-present superiority crumbling like a sandcastle meeting the tide. There was no pleasure in this, only a sense of balance restored. In the days leading up to this, I'd watched her from afar, the queen of a crumbling kingdom. Her reign had been marked by arbitrary fines and needless complaints. She had become a specter, haunting our lives, her presence a constant reminder of injustice. But now, the pendulum swung back. The power she clung to, slipping through her fingers like so much dust. The irony was not lost on me. She had insisted on rules above all else, her fortress built on the foundation of order. Yet, it was the system she revered that would topple her throne. A lesson in hubris, a life unraveling not through chaos but through the very structures she idolized. I could only imagine her reaction, the dawning realization of her vulnerability. Here was a woman who had never been challenged, now confronted with the ultimate challenge, her own survival. And yet, I felt a twinge of pity. We were all just players, after all, caught in life's intricate game. The final act was hers to choose. To fight, to flee, to seek redemption or wallow in denial. I hoped she'd find a path to grace amidst the wreckage, but that was not my concern. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in twilight, I felt a quiet satisfaction, not from vengeance, but from justice served, a wrong quietly righted. My father, for the first time in months, tended to his garden under the soft glow of evening, unburdened by the weight of her scrutiny. In the end, it wasn't about the mortgage or the eviction notice. It was about reclaiming peace and dignity, about standing up for those who couldn't stand for themselves. As night fell, a gentle breeze rustled the leaves, a whisper of change, a promise of new beginnings. The morning sun spilled over the horizon, casting long shadows that danced across the quiet streets. The air seemed thicker, charged with a promise that today would be different. I stood on the porch, feeling the cool morning breeze, waiting for the neighborhood to stir. It was the kind of stillness that held its breath in anticipation. The day before had been a whirlwind, a blur of papers and signatures that sealed Karen's fate. The ink was barely dry on the documents that transferred her mortgage to my name, a power move that was both exhilarating and daunting. I had wrested control from her hands, taking back the peace she had so ruthlessly shattered. It felt like justice, a poetic realignment of the universe. With a quiet resolve, I stepped off the porch and walked the familiar path to my father's home. His house stood proudly, a bastion of resilience amid the chaos Karen had tried to sow. The garden brimmed with life, vibrant blooms defying the confines of the yard, as if even the plants understood their role in this quiet rebellion. My father, once bound by the shackles of Karen's scrutiny, seemed lighter. I watched him from the window, his wheelchair nestled in the sun-dappled corner of the garden. He was tending to his flowers, his hands moving with a grace that belied his age and ailments. There was a peace about him now, unburdened by the relentless tyranny that had plagued us for far too long. It was time. I set out, the decision weighing heavily but with a clarity that drove my steps. The neighborhood seemed to echo my purpose, the air alive with an unspoken understanding. Each house I passed felt like an ally, silent witnesses to our struggle and triumph. Karen's house crouched at the corner of the street, its grandeur diminished by the truth that now lay bare. The facade she had maintained so meticulously was crumbling, exposed for the illusion it was. I approached, each step measured with intention. The door, once a symbol of her reign, now just another threshold to be crossed. I knocked, the sound reverberating through the quiet. Inside there was a scuffle, the telltale signs of her world shifting. Karen appeared at the door, her eyes a storm of disbelief and defiance. The 30-day notice had been delivered the day before, and she was still grappling with its implications. The power had shifted, and she was powerless against the tide she had unwittingly unleashed. In that moment, words seemed unnecessary. The silence between us spoke volumes, a testament to the unyielding truths we both understood. Her world was collapsing, while ours was being rebuilt. She opened her mouth, perhaps to protest or plead, but the words never came. Instead, the weight of reality settled in, and she turned away, retreating into the shadows of her once commanding presence. As I walked back, the sun had risen higher, casting its warmth on the street. The neighborhood felt different, lighter. The oppressive shadow Karen had cast was lifting, making way for something new. A community restored, one where my father could live with dignity and peace. And so the cycle ended as it had begun, with a quiet resolve and a hope for better days. The neighborhood, once fractured by her tyranny, was healing, slowly, but with the certainty of a dawn that follows the darkest night. Karen had been sidelined, her reign reduced to a mere whisper in the wind. The scales of justice had tipped, and balance was restored.